So, hi, I'm Max. This is the first Claude Code Curious interview. And the idea of these is to take the interviews we might do at the event and instead do them here. Today, we're talking with Andrew Lin. This is my first in this series. And Andrew, why don't you introduce yourself and give people a sense of how you got to working on AI stuff?
Hey Max, I started off as a journalist and then got into the app space and then kind of worked with startups for a while. And then more recently, as a result of being able to code using AI, I've been able to launch various projects on my own.
Let's go back to the beginning then of these AI projects. What was the first thing you were working on? How did you get there? What were you using? Do you remember how you felt at the time?
So the first tool that I saw was Lovable. And I remember thinking that I saw people doing things on Lovable that I'd not been able to do on my own without developers or without designers. I'd used tools like Squarespace and various other web builders, and I'd kind of also done a bit of my own coding, but nothing as advanced as the sort of stuff I was seeing coming out in the vibe coding community when it first started. So I went onto Lovable, I typed in a prompt, and I had that instant feeling that I had in the early 2000s, this kind of rush of feeling that this was a tool that I was going to be able to use to build really exciting things. So as everyone does, I think when they first use an AI tool, I went totally overboard and tried to build a chat app. And not just any chat app. I think I started with a therapy chat app because that's an easy place to start. You know, the therapy mental health space. I thought, oh, brilliant. Why not tackle one of the world's, most challenging subject matters as my first vibe coding project?
A question there. How is it different building then versus now?
I mean, my workflow has become a lot more professional now than it was back then. But Lovable is a really, really, really fantastic tool. It's really great for prototyping, and it's really great to get an idea from nothing to something. But what I found as I used it over time is that when it comes to kind of building out possibly some more of the infrastructure, more of the frameworks, more of the way you think around things, Lovable kind of does things in a way where you get a product, but maybe you have to spend quite a lot of time refining it. Whereas as I work now, I probably work a little bit slower, and it's more detailed, and I work more like a developer. If you use it for long enough, you learn how to develop because you have to.
The messaging on something like Lovable is we're going to help you build real finished working app. And the problem is that status of finished and perfect is something that AI claims it can do a lot. And yet it's almost the one thing it really can't do without a person involved. If you get someone to do some writing for you, it's going to need a person at the end to make it not AI bad, let's say. And I would say the same thing with Lovable. If you get it to make an app for you, it'll technically work, but it's not going to feel like finished in the way where someone makes it.
One of the things you start to pick up on as you use these tools, that bug fixing and actually going back and checking your work and figuring out where the AI's gone wrong is a big part of that.
I think you're really onto something there as well, because I do think building with these tools helps you understand what AI is capable of generally and not. When you then review the promises of a certain product, you're able to judge it because to get it to do that reliably behind the scenes would be a nightmare.
You'll notice this if you use ChatGPT or you use Claude or use any tool. AI is incredibly confident even when it's wrong.
But it's about trust, right? It's that, in a sense, you can't actually trust it on anything. And by that, I mean, it's writing me a load of code, but I don't know the code well enough to judge if it's truly great or not. So I just have to choose. I'm not actually going to trust it there. I'm just going to know it's probably not at its best. Then in other areas, when it gives me a reply on something or a suggestion for something I do understand, I'm going to, again, not really trust it there, but know the area well enough to correct it. And there are other areas where I'm probably not even going to ask it because its sense of taste or genuine judgment doesn't really exist. So it's got a very odd trust spectrum where I don't trust it on any of them, but I just choose how much I'm going to let it go anyway.
Yes.
Great. So let's look at your first builds then again in more detail. What did you learn kind of doing that project? Let's unpack some of that.
So just to explain what the project was, it was called Chatkin. It's the idea is that it was a coaching platform. But it wasn't just any coaching platform. It was a coaching platform based on historical figures. So you could ask Marcus Aurelius advice. You could ask Einstein. You could ask Freud, Carl Jung. The idea was it was kind of bringing to life historical voices who could help you navigate life in the modern world, but from a historical perspective sometimes, if you needed that. As I started building the platform, conceptually what I realized is that when you have an idea and you're going through the process of building it out, sometimes you can fall in love with the idea, not show it to anyone, get to the point where you decided that it's the right path. And then when you actually give it out to customers, they might have a different response. What I realized is that people found talking to AI a bit creepy. I just assumed that universally that people were using it in the same way that I was, that they were kind of understanding it was a tool, but kind of trying to get the most out of it. And when I gave it to normal people who aren't in the industry, everyone was like, oh God, why would I want to speak to a dead person? Or like, this is weird. I didn't expect it as much as it came out. And then technically what I realized is that sometimes what you need to understand with development, but also AI development in particular, is that if you have a straight line in mind and you're building a feature and you hit a wall, and you can spend a lot of time trying to fix that wall because you're obsessed with it working a certain way, that very often you are better off finding other pathways or potentially even not adding that feature.
It sounds ridiculous, but I do think there's some comparison to more artistic techniques than scientific techniques as well. The thing that came to mind as you were describing that was the sculptor thing of saying that when you're making the sculpture, all you're doing is chipping away the bits that shouldn't be there and just allowing what was in the sculpture all along to come through. When you come to scoping a project, rather than trying to like brute force it and say it's going to be X, there's that sense of holding it loosely and kind of listening to what it's telling you and like following that.
For me, the analogy I used was this idea of a tree growing on nature. It's this idea of actually understanding that there are natural pathways, in not just in conceptually, but in your code. When I was a journalist, I remember there was a whole community of people who loved camera equipment, but they really didn't love taking pictures as much as they loved the equipment. They would spend most of their days talking about the equipment. And what you'd find is that a lot of these guys would take the same pictures. It'd be a close-up picture of a bird. It'd be a close-up picture of like a flower. It was the same thing again and again. You go on Flickr, which was the photo sharing app of the day, and they more or less had the same portfolios. And these guys would spend 90% of their time talking about the lens and the body and the bag they got to carry the lens and the body in and the tripod they got and the remote flash. I care about building. I'm trying to build. So when people get stuck around all the different skills, all the different processes, I'm more interested in seeing what people are building. So for me, it's like ship it, like ship something, make something.
But at the same time, just sort of playing devil's advocate, it does feel like for a lot of people, this has become like a discovery of a hobby.
Yeah.
You know, in the way that people might get into woodworking or painting or writing or photography, obviously. You know, we're in like startup world. It is about shipping things, getting out there, making something, sell it, scale it, all of this on one side. But within that now, it's an opportunity for people to do something really enjoyable that was previously only available to people in those startups.
I think for the first time, as you said, in a very long time, the tools are available for people to build things that were unimaginable 10 years ago. Like you're able to build things now that 10 years ago would not be possible. And I think there's a huge opportunity now for everyone to have an idea and build it, and not just as a prototype, but build it as a real thing. Now, whether or not that thing goes on to become a multi-billion-pound company, that's kind of less of a concern. I think it's more about can you creatively take something from here and put it in the world. And now that's easier than ever. And I think it's the promise that we've been made countless times by countless businesses, and now it's actually real. Like now it's not just hype or marketing. Now you can actually have an idea and make it reality. And that is incredibly powerful.
Yeah, and actually I think there's a couple of things there too. Like, you know, we are in a little AI group and have been for about a year with other people doing this, and some of them are so good at getting up on GitHub, at contributing to other projects, at forking another project. You know, the open source world is super made for this. And the second side to that is once you start doing that, you get into something that's really exciting for me personally at the moment, which is collaboration. A lot of people are starting with Lovable, with Claude Code, with these tools, building stuff, super excited about it. Then they're spinning off sub-agents to work with them, but they're still all alone. And I've recently had the experience of starting to build with someone else. And you know, if you get excited when the AI writes the code, it's even more exciting when you see a pull request from another person who's got a load of AI to write the code. That is thrilling in the way that when I first became a manager, suddenly work was getting done without me. And it means more that it's coming from another person driving AI and agents. And I think that's going to be transformative because I think it relates into the fact of just how early all this is. There's loads of people who've never been able to make things in the software world that are now able to make things, but we're all like babies. We're all in a naive early phase, and it takes time to get really good at something, to get as good as you were at writing, to find your voice, to find the feel of that thing. And so as I get older, I think I become better of reminding myself of patience, and that the stuff we'll see a year from now will be better, not because the models get better, but because the people get better.
I was a journalist, and I met all these incredibly interesting people, including Steve Jobs, and spoke to them and learned from them and thought, you know, that's a world I want to be involved in. And the publishing world kind of became weirder and weirder. I mean, my experience of publishing got to the point where I was reading these websites and there's like 50 ads. I was just like, I can't read any of these websites anymore. I don't even want to go to them. And that bothered me. And I thought, what if I could build a platform that gave you the magazine experience online, but I didn't want to make it huge. So I thought, okay, I'm going to build these mini magazines. And that's how what I'm working on now, which is called MicroMag.app, started, which was like a magazine builder. So it's kind of somewhere between an Instagram carousel and GQ magazine.
So you decided this was the project. It seems to have come to you quite clearly from your past. What did you do first, though? This is a way of asking, what's your advice to people who are about to start a new project? What did you actually do?
You came along and I think you helped me see the potential of tools like Claude Code. And so that's when I realized that if you're really serious about this, you need to be using the right tools. So that's when I switched to Claude Code, which is, I would say, right now one of the best tools. I've used Codex as a tool within other tools, but in terms of my workflow, the stack that I use Claude Code, and I use Gemini in Anti-Gravity, which is Google's AI coding tool. I like using Cloudflare to deploy because it's incredibly fast and it's very, very cheap, and it's fantastic. When I'm using databases, I use Supabase, which Lovable also uses Supabase, but it's a great database. Typically now I'm using fewer tools than I did. So in the beginning, you kind of get obsessed with all this AI tools and, as you say, skills. And I mean, I work in the terminal, which is the kind of the black box that looks like something out of like a 90s hacker film.
Very quick interjection there. If they just updated macOS to make the background of the terminal white, they would transform adoption of these tools overnight. I'm just saying that's my little thought here, but go on.
My stack's really simple. So terminal, I pop it up, I open my project folder, I've got all my rigs set up. It knows what it needs to do. I've got MD files, which are kind of these files that guide your AI, to code in the way that you want it to.
Bit more detail though.
And
you say you have MD files. What MD files?
So Claude has like a Claude.md file that basically is the brain of the operation and kind of tells it how to act. You can give it a lot of information. Number one, you can give it an information about who you are. For example, you can say to it, look, I'm a novice and I want you to speak to me in this way, and I want you to explain things in a way that is more human. And so you can give it reference points so that when it opens up a project, it's not opening it from scratch thinking, hey, what is this? And who is this person I'm speaking to?
So that's your setup. What work did you do to get this project rolling?
I mean, this project...
Should you say, build me a magazine now? What do you do?
I don't try and put in like the whole concept and try to make it build the whole thing at the same time. Now what I do is I try to just build the feature first. So I actually started with like, can I build something that makes magazines? Can I build the engine? Forget the website and all that bit. Can I build the thing that it's supposed to do? So I've built a full-scale editor. You can add assets, you can edit, you can turn them, you can reshape them, you can even remove background images. And that took about 3 to 4 months of hard work before I really started on anything else. That's when I built the rest of the machine, because then I thought, okay, now I've got something that actually works.
So where have you got to? Where is it at now? What are you grappling with?
As I said before, I think the first month of putting it out to market, which was really R&D, was successful because I got 30 people signing up, giving me feedback, and they ranged from journalists, creatives, marketing directors. They were the kind of people that I wanted to target, and loved it, right? And this is something you'll learn when you build products. Everyone loves it, but when it comes to actually becoming part of a workflow, really hard to break into somebody's day-to-day pattern. So that's when I started building AI integration. At the back of that, had a really fantastic conversation with an older publishing MD who is now potentially going to work with me. And that conversation turned into product development, which now is focusing on a slightly different direction.
Funny what you mentioned there about that you built a manual process and then you're like, oh, great, I should make one where the AI can do the building. Because it reminds me of like an app I worked on a couple of years ago where I got a notebook and I said, okay, what would the magic version of this app do? And this is before LLMs really kicked in and were accessible. Then I came back to it, a year or two later, and I looked at this note about the magic version and I was like, I can just build the magic version. I can actually just build the version that would have been impossible before because you hook an LLM in on the back end.
Yeah.
And I think that weird balance of ambition, in one sense, you can be more ambitious than you thought because you can get an LLM to do such like capable, interesting things that a user would have had to do. But on the flip side, when you decide what to build and how, you need to scope it very carefully so that that's not the bit holding you up. I mean, where do you see the direction of travel right now? And is it optimistic or pessimistic, or what's your feeling about where this is going and what we should expect?
I lean optimistic, but I'm aware that there are pessimistic outcomes to what's happening. I think it's an opportunity for creative people to do things that they couldn't do before. So the balance for me is optimistic in many ways, but also aware and conscious that we're dealing with a situation where a lot of people will lose work, and and that has to be addressed. On the other hand, I think we also have to look at the optimistic and positive side of things, which is a lot of people are now being given tools that are going to help them thrive in ways that were not possible 10 years ago. And that's one of my missions. In addition to building MicroMag, I'm also building something called DreamVibe.ai, which is also a platform where I'm helping people to understand what vibe coding is, how to access it, the tools available, because I also believe that people will be able to do things that they weren't before and will be able to survive doing those things. And I think that's really important that people understand.
Great. Well, look, I've really enjoyed this chat. Thank you for telling me about what you've been working on, and we'll see you at a Claude Code Curious event soon, no doubt. Right?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, I'll be there for sure.